The next world war will be fought not with bullets and bombs, but with bytes and algorithms. These words from a former NSA director highlight an uncomfortable reality. The new battlefield for global power is financial. Like invisible chess moves on a global board, this economic warfare unfolds silently before our eyes. What happens when nations weaponize their economic advantages? Russia controls energy. China dominates manufacturing and rare earth minerals. Iran sits at a critical global shipping choke point. Together, they're creating what some analysts call a financial crisis blueprint, a roadmap to potentially destabilize Western economies without firing a single shot. Could your financial security be collateral damage? The digital battlefield. What if the most dangerous weapons in modern warfare never make a sound? No explosions, no gunfire, just keystrokes in a dimly lit room thousands of miles away from their targets. This is the reality of cyber warfare, the silent front in today's geopolitical conflicts, where nations wage battles without deploying a single soldier. Traditional warfare has always been visible and audible. Tanks rolling across borders, aircraft soaring overhead, naval vessels patrolling contested waters. But digital attacks operate invisibly, like ghosts in the machine, potentially more devastating than conventional weapons. A single line of malicious code can disable critical infrastructure, paralyze communication networks, or manipulate the very systems that keep our economies functioning. What if this invisible code could topple an entire financial giant within hours? Financial systems have emerged as primary targets in this new battlefield for strategic reasons. Financial infrastructure represents the nervous system of modern economies, processing trillions of dollars daily through interconnected networks that span the globe. When nations seek to weaken adversaries without direct military confrontation, disrupting these systems offers an attractive alternative. A nation's ability to conduct trade, manage currency, and maintain market stability directly impacts its national security posture. The evidence of this shift from physical to digital confrontation is mounting. In 2007, Estonia experienced what many consider the first large-scale cyber attack against a nation-state when its banking system, government websites, and media outlets were simultaneously targeted by suspected Russian hackers responding to Estonia's removal of a Soviet-era memorial. This marked a turning point, demonstrating how digital attacks could effectively paralyze a modern, technology-dependent nation. Since then, we've witnessed a dramatic evolution in financially targeted cyber operations. The 2016 Bangladesh Bank Heist attempted to steal $1 billion through compromised SWIFT terminals, the secure messaging system that banks use worldwide. Attackers still managed to steal $81 million, demonstrating vulnerability in what was considered one of the most secure financial networks. Russia, China, and Iran have all developed specialized cyber units focused on financial targets. Russia's APT-28 Fancy Bear and APT-29 Cozy Bear have demonstrated capabilities to target financial institutions. China's APT-41 has conducted operations spanning financial theft, espionage, and destructive attacks. Iran's APT-33 and APT-34 have increasingly targeted financial services after initially focusing on energy sectors. The capabilities of these units have evolved significantly. Basic, distributed denial of service attacks have transformed into sophisticated system manipulation. Today's state-sponsored hackers can alter data within systems, manipulate market information, or compromise transaction integrity, all while maintaining persistent access to networks for months undetected. Financial infrastructure presents strategic advantages for attackers. Unlike military targets, which are typically hardened against attacks and physically isolated, financial systems must remain connected to function, creating inevitable vulnerability points. Their complexity makes attribution difficult. Determining with certainty who is responsible presents significant challenges for defenders. Financial targets offer something military targets cannot: asymmetric impact. A nation with limited conventional military power can achieve outsized effects by successfully targeting an adversary's financial system. The cost of developing cyber capabilities is fractional compared to building traditional military forces, yet the potential damage can be comparable or greater. This creates an especially attractive option for nations like Russia, China, and Iran. Each faces significant conventional military disadvantages when compared to Western powers, particularly the United States. But in cyberspace, this power differential narrows considerably. Russia has demonstrated sophisticated capabilities that rival any nation. China possesses vast human resources to deploy against digital targets. Iran, despite facing significant sanctions, has rapidly developed concerning cyber capabilities. Russia's approach illustrates this dynamic. While its conventional military spending is roughly 1/10 of the United States, its cyber capabilities have achieved remarkable parity. Russian hackers have penetrated numerous financial institutions, energy companies, and government agencies in Western countries, providing potential leverage disproportionate to Russia's economic strength. China focuses on long-term strategic objectives. Its cyber units have allegedly conducted large-scale intellectual property theft from financial technology companies, potentially allowing China to leapfrog decades of research and development. By gaining insights into proprietary trading algorithms and security protocols, China builds capabilities that could later be deployed against the very systems they studied. Iran demonstrates perhaps the most striking example of asymmetric advantage. Despite having an economy roughly 2% the size of the United States and facing crippling sanctions, Iran has built cyber capabilities that regularly target Western financial institutions. The 2012 to 2013 attacks against major U.S. banks demonstrated this capacity, temporarily disrupting online banking services for millions of customers. These nations have recognized that cyber warfare provides them with asymmetric power against stronger conventional military forces. Rather than competing on unfavorable terms in traditional domains, they've invested heavily in capabilities that target vulnerabilities in interconnected financial systems. This approach doesn't require matching Western military budgets. It requires identifying and exploiting weaknesses in systems that cannot be isolated from global networks. What makes financial systems particularly vulnerable? Financial networks were built primarily for efficiency and reliability, with security often added secondarily. Many operate on legacy systems with known vulnerabilities. Others rely on complex chains of trust between institutions, creating numerous potential points of failure. These vulnerabilities aren't theoretical. They're being actively probed and mapped by foreign cyber units preparing for potential future operations. The most dangerous aspect of this threat isn't what these nations have already done, but what they're positioning themselves to do if geopolitical tensions escalate further. Financial system vulnerabilities. What makes the global financial system an ideal target for digital disruption? The answer lies in its fundamental architecture, a complex network designed primarily for efficiency and speed rather than security. Modern financial networks function as a single integrated ecosystem spanning continents and connecting institutions of all sizes. Everyday SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, processes over 42 million messages directing the movement of trillions of dollars between more than 11,000 financial institutions worldwide. These staggering volumes create enormous attack surfaces where a single compromised message could trigger cascading failures. Similarly, payment processors like Visa handle over 65,000 transactions per second during peak periods. This vast web of interconnected systems enables global commerce, but creates an environment where disruption can spread rapidly throughout the system. This interconnectedness creates systemic vulnerabilities, extending beyond individual institutions. The financial system resembles a delicately woven fabric. When one thread frays, the entire tapestry becomes unstable. When banks communicate with clearinghouses, which communicate with central banks, which communicate with payment processors, each connection represents a potential entry point for attackers. The compromise of even a moderately sized regional bank could provide access to larger systems through trusted communication channels. This trust-based architecture means that once attackers establish a foothold, lateral movement to more significant targets becomes considerably easier. The situation is compounded by widespread reliance on legacy systems in many financial institutions. Banking infrastructure often consists of core systems developed decades ago, written in languages like COBOL that few programmers understand today. A 2019 survey found that 43% of banking systems were built on technologies that have reached end-of-life status, meaning they no longer receive security updates. These outdated systems were created before the internet became universal, before cloud computing, and certainly before sophisticated state-sponsored hacking operations became commonplace. Financial institutions hesitate to replace these vulnerable systems because of enormous technical challenges and business risks. TSB Bank's 2018 migration attempt resulted in a catastrophic IT failure that locked nearly 2 million customers out of their accounts for weeks and cost over £330 million in damages and compensation. Such failures make institutions reluctant to modernize, even when they understand the security implications. Concentration risk in critical systems presents another significant vulnerability. The global financial system relies heavily on a small number of infrastructure providers. Just 3 payment message formats dominate global finance: SWIFT, Fedwire, and CHIPS. 4 credit card networks process the majority of car transactions. This concentration means attacks targeting these central points could affect thousands of institutions simultaneously. The problem extends to technology providers too, with many institutions using identical core banking software, network equipment, and security vendors, creating the potential for cascading failures if vulnerabilities are discovered. Financial systems operate under 24/7 requirements that severely limit maintenance windows for security updates. When markets close in New York, they open in Tokyo. When European banks go offline for maintenance, Middle Eastern institutions need to process transactions. This constant operational tempo makes applying critical security patches nearly impossible without disrupting business operations. Many institutions resort to complex workarounds that introduce their own risks, often resulting in delayed implementation of security patches. The speed of modern transactions amplifies the impact of even brief disruptions. During the 2010 flash crash, U.S. equity markets lost and recovered approximately $1 trillion in market value within 36 minutes due to algorithmic trading irregularities. This demonstrated how quickly markets can destabilize when transaction processing is disrupted. A targeted attack could potentially trigger automated selling, margin calls, and liquidity crises across multiple markets simultaneously. Financial institutions also face tension between security and accessibility. Customers expect seamless, instant access through multiple channels, mobile apps, web interfaces, and third-party services. Each access point represents a potential vulnerability. This accessibility requirement conflicts with security best practices that would limit system access and isolate critical functions. The result is a constant balancing act between customer experience and security, often resolved through complex compensating controls rather than fundamental security by design. These vulnerabilities become particularly dangerous when exploited simultaneously in coordinated attacks. A sophisticated adversary could target multiple aspects of this infrastructure at once, compromising systems at several institutions, disrupting central payment processors, and interfering with communication networks. Such multi-vector attacks could create cascading failures as institutions lose confidence in the integrity of their counterparty systems. The vulnerabilities in our financial system emerged as natural consequences of how these networks evolved, prioritizing efficiency, global connectivity, and customer convenience. But these characteristics make financial infrastructure an ideal target for nations seeking asymmetric advantages against economically stronger adversaries. Russia has been particularly focused on developing capabilities to exploit these weaknesses, with a cyber arsenal that includes sophisticated financial system penetration tools. From banking Trojans to swift network compromises, Russian hackers have demonstrated both the capability and willingness to target financial infrastructure in ways that cause significant economic damage. Russia's cyber arsenal. How did a Russian cyber attack once cause $10 billion in global damages without directly targeting banks? In June 2017, a malicious piece of software called NotPetya began spreading across Ukraine. Initially disguised as ransomware, it quickly revealed itself as something far more destructive. Within hours, the malware had infected systems at shipping giant Maersk, pharmaceutical company Merck, food producer Mondelez, and dozens of other major corporations worldwide. The attack paralyzed operations, disrupted supply chains, and ultimately caused approximately $10 billion in damages. Despite never directly targeting financial institutions, NotPetya demonstrated Russia's ability to inflict massive economic costs through cyber means. Russia's cyber warfare capabilities represent one of the most sophisticated arsenals in the digital domain. The country has systematically developed these tools over decades, establishing specialized units within both military and intelligence services. The main intelligence directorate, GRU, houses Unit 26165 and Unit 74455, known to security researchers as Fancy Bear and Sandworm respectively. The Federal Security Service, FSB, operates Cozy Bear, APT-29, while other groups like Turla and Gamma complete Russia's ecosystem of state-sponsored hacking. Teams. These units form a coordinated system where different groups specialize in particular targets or techniques. While Fancy Bear focuses on initial access and intelligence gathering, Sandworm specializes in destructive capabilities against critical infrastructure. This specialization allows Russia to maintain persistent access to targeted systems while conducting operations ranging from espionage to disruption. Russia's approach to cyber operations has evolved through increasingly bold tests against financial targets. In 2007, Estonia experienced widespread disruption of banking services during diplomatic tensions with Russia. By 2015 to 2016, Russian hackers targeted the SWIFT financial messaging system used by Ukrainian banks, stealing millions through fraudulent transfers. The 2017 NotPetya attack represented a significant escalation, showing Russia's willingness to deploy destructive malware with global economic consequences. The NotPetya attack serves as a particularly instructive case study in financial system disruption. Initially targeting Ukrainian companies through a compromised accounting software update, the malware spread rapidly beyond its intended targets. The attack's timing, the day before a Ukrainian holiday, maximized damage by ensuring technical staff would be absent when problems began. NotPetya functioned as a wiper, permanently encrypting data with no possibility of recovery, leaving companies paralyzed and facing staggering recovery costs. The financial impact extended far beyond direct targets. Shipping giant Maersk lost approximately $300 million and had to rebuild its entire IT infrastructure. FedEx's European subsidiary TNT Express reported similar damages. Insurance companies faced unprecedented claims, subsequently rewriting policies to exclude cyber attacks attributed to nation-states, creating a new gap in the financial system's risk management capabilities. The technical sophistication of Russian APT groups reveals capabilities beyond conventional hacking. These units employ custom malware designed to evade detection, utilize zero-day vulnerabilities, and demonstrate deep knowledge of industrial control systems and financial networks. Sandworm has demonstrated capabilities to disrupt critical infrastructure, executing attacks against Ukraine's power grid in 2015 and 2016 that caused blackouts affecting hundreds of thousands of customers. This capability could potentially target power systems supporting major financial centers. Russia's strategic evolution follows a deliberate pattern, operating in escalating stages, assessing target responses, and refining techniques with each operation. The country's hackers gain actual combat experience, while Western defenders struggle with attribution and appropriate responses, creating an asymmetric advantage where Russia operates with relative impunity below the threshold of armed conflict. Evidence shows Russian attacks, specifically targeting SWIFT banking networks, In 2018, researchers discovered malware targeting SWIFT service bureaus that provide connectivity to smaller financial institutions. By compromising these service providers, attackers could potentially manipulate financial messages across multiple banks simultaneously. The targeting pattern suggests a deliberate effort to map the global financial system's infrastructure. Russia's strategic doctrine explicitly recognizes cyberattacks as economic pressure tools. The country's military writings discuss information confrontation as a key element of modern warfare, with economic targets identified as strategic priorities. Russia's doctrine emphasizes disruption and degradation of adversary capabilities during periods of tension. This approach aligns with broader Russian security concepts that view economic and information warfare as extensions of traditional military power. Former military chief Valery Gerasimov's doctrine emphasizes non-military means to achieve strategic objectives, with cyber operations playing a central role in this toolkit. Russia's integration of cyber operations with other forms of hybrid warfare creates particularly dangerous scenarios for financial systems. The country coordinates cyber attacks with information operations, diplomatic pressure, energy manipulation, and conventional military posturing. During the 2014 Ukraine crisis, cyber attacks against Ukrainian banks coincided with military movements, economic sanctions, and natural gas supply restrictions. This synchronized approach magnifies impact while complicating attribution. What makes Russia's cyber arsenal particularly threatening to financial systems is how it combines with a country's energy leverage. Russia supplies approximately 40% of Europe's natural gas and remains a major global oil producer. During winter months, Russia could potentially combine energy supply restrictions with cyber attacks against financial transaction systems, creating simultaneous pressure on physical, infrastructure, and digital systems. The Russian model differs significantly from China's approach to financial cyber warfare. While Russia emphasizes disruption and destruction capabilities, China has pursued a more patient strategy focused on long-term intelligence gathering. This contrast reflects fundamental differences. Russia seeks tools to offset Western advantages in conventional military power, while China builds capabilities aligned with its long-term economic and political objectives. China's digital dominance. What makes China's cyber threat to financial systems fundamentally different from Russia's? The answer lies in China's patient, methodical approach to establishing digital dominance. While Russia often employs cyber capabilities for immediate disruptive impact, China operates on a different timeline altogether, one measured in years and decades rather than days or weeks. The patient dragon, China's long-game approach. China's approach to cyber operations reflects its broader strategic thinking, patient, comprehensive, and oriented toward long-term objectives. Since at least the early 2000s, China has developed sophisticated cyber capabilities through military units like the Strategic Support Force and affiliated groups that security researchers track under names like APT-1, APT-10, and APT-41. These units operate with remarkable persistence, maintaining access to targeted networks for extended periods. This strategic patience creates a stark contrast with Russia's disruptive approach, where Russian operations like NotPetya demonstrate willingness to cause immediate visible damage. Chinese intrusions prioritize stealth and persistence. Consider this revealing statistic. Chinese hackers maintain access to compromised networks for an average of 18 months before detection, nearly 3 times longer than the global average for cyber intrusions. Take the case of Operation Cloudhopper, where Chinese hackers infiltrated managed service providers to gain access to hundreds of companies across banking and finance. For years, they operated silently within these networks, like underwater currents beneath a seemingly calm surface, extracting valuable data while carefully avoiding detection. The technical capabilities of Chinese hacking groups, particularly APT-41, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of financial system architecture. This group has targeted stock trading software, banking applications, and cryptocurrency exchanges with custom malware designed to monitor transactions. Security researchers have documented APT-41's ability to inject code into trading applications that could alter transaction data at critical moments. APT-41 exhibits a dual nature, conducting both state-sponsored espionage and financially motivated criminal operations. This hybrid approach complicates attribution and response, as defenders must determine whether an intrusion represents national security espionage or criminal theft. The group has compromised investment firms, stock trading platforms, and financial data aggregators across multiple countries. China emphasizes intellectual property theft from financial technology companies, aligning with its broader Made in China 2025 initiative. By stealing proprietary algorithms, security implementations, and system architectures, China gains accelerated development of domestic financial technology and detailed knowledge of vulnerabilities in Western systems. Security firms have documented extensive theft of financial intellectual property. Trading algorithms valued at millions of dollars have been exfiltrated from investment banks. Source code for banking applications has been stolen from software vendors. Security researchers have identified theft of encryption implementation details, potentially undermining fundamental security guarantees. China's advanced persistent threats maintain long-term unauthorized access while evading detection. Technical analysis of malware attributed to Chinese groups reveals self-modifying code that changes its signature, encrypted command channels that blend with legitimate traffic, and rootkit functionality that hides malicious activity from security monitoring tools. This persistence allows Chinese operators to dwell within financial networks for years. During this time, they gather intelligence on not just technical architecture, but also business processes, security procedures, and operational patterns of financial institutions, enabling sophisticated operations beyond quick-strike attacks. China's unique advantage stems from its dominant position in global technology manufacturing. Approximately 75% of mobile phones, 90% of personal computers, and much of the world's network equipment are manufactured in China. This creates opportunities to introduce hardware-level vulnerabilities that software security measures cannot detect. Financial institutions face particular challenges, requiring specialized hardware for security functions, many manufactured in China or with Chinese components. Compromised hardware could enable interception of encryption keys, backdoor access, or manipulation of transaction data, while remaining invisible to software security measures. This comprehensive approach to cyber operations reflects China's broader strategic vision. Where Russia seeks immediate leverage and disruption, China builds capabilities aligned with its long-term goal of reshaping the international financial system. Chinese leadership has explicitly stated ambitions to internationalize the yuan, develop alternatives to SWIFT, and reduce dependence on dollar-denominated trade. China's capabilities could enable manipulation rather than disruption of financial markets. Rather than taking systems offline, operators could alter data, manipulate market information, or compromise transaction integrity in subtle ways. Even minor manipulation of market data during peak trading could trigger algorithmic responses that amplify market movements, while temporary disruption of settlement systems could freeze interbank lending during critical periods. By maintaining persistent access without causing visible damage, China preserves options while avoiding attribution. Western defenders face the challenge of detecting intrusions designed to remain hidden while determining appropriate responses to activities that don't cross clear thresholds for retaliation. While Russia's cyber arsenal presents a clear danger to financial stability through disruptive attacks, China's digital dominance represents a more fundamental long-term challenge. Russia demonstrates capabilities to break systems. China builds capabilities to control them, reflecting fundamentally different strategic positions. As we turn to examine Iran's emerging cyber threat, we see a third, distinct model, one born of necessity and defensive considerations rather than superpower ambitions. Iran's rapid development of cyber capabilities demonstrates how quickly a determined nation can build effective offensive. Iran's emerging cyber threat. How did a nation under strict sanctions develop cyber capabilities that now threaten major banks? Iran's journey from cyber victim to cyber power represents one of the most remarkable transformations in digital warfare history. Just 15 years ago, Iran possessed minimal offensive cyber capabilities. Today, security experts rank Iranian hackers among the most concerning threats to financial institutions worldwide. Iran's rapid development of cyber warfare capabilities occurred despite international isolation. Following the 2010 Stuxnet attack that damaged its nuclear centrifuges, Iran recognized its digital vulnerability and launched an aggressive program to build defensive and offensive cyber capabilities. The Iranian government invested heavily in technical education, established specialized military units, and recruited from the country's skilled computer science graduates and hacker communities. This development occurred while Iran faced some of the most comprehensive sanctions ever imposed on a nation. Cut off from international financial systems and technology markets, Iran built indigenous capabilities from necessity. The country established the Supreme Council of Cyberspace in 2012, directly overseen by the Supreme Leader, signaling the strategic importance of this domain. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps created specialized cyber units, while universities expanded programs in computer science and security. The 2010 Stuxnet attack, widely attributed to the United States and Israel, targeted Iranian nuclear infrastructure and revealed serious vulnerabilities. Iran responded by developing offensive capabilities and deploying them against Western targets within just 2 years, transforming from cyber victim to aggressor with remarkable speed. By 2012, Iranian hackers launched Operation Ababil, devastating distributed denial-of-service attacks against major U.S. financial institutions. These attacks targeted Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and other leading banks with traffic volumes that crippled online banking services. At their peak, the attacks generated over 60 gigabits per second of malicious traffic, leaving thousands of customers unable to access accounts and forcing banks to scramble emergency response teams. The bank attacks marked a significant turning point in Iranian cyber strategy. They demonstrated Iran's willingness to directly target civilian financial infrastructure in response to geopolitical tensions, specifically the increasing sanctions pressure on Iran's own financial system. The timing aligned with new U.S. sanctions targeting Iranian banks and oil exports. The technical sophistication surprised many security analysts. The Iranian operators leveraged compromised servers at data centers, giving them substantially more bandwidth than typical attacks. They employed multiple attack vectors simultaneously, making defense difficult. When banks adapted their defenses, the attackers modified their techniques within days, showing an operational agility indicating professional development. While the bank attacks caused disruption, the 2012 Shamoon attacks against Saudi Aramco revealed destructive capabilities of an entirely different magnitude. In August 2012, malware wiped data from approximately 30,000 computers at Saudi Arabia's national oil company, replacing files with an image of a burning American flag. The attack destroyed corporate data across the organization, forcing the company to temporarily return to typewriters and paper records, essentially erasing decades of technological progress overnight. By striking Saudi Aramco, Iran demonstrated willingness to target critical economic infrastructure in regional adversaries. Security researchers noted that similar techniques could potentially target financial institutions with comparable effects, erasing transaction records or corrupting databases essential to banking operations. Iran's focus on financial systems has intensified since 2014. Security firms have documented Iranian intrusion attempts against central banks, commercial banking networks, and financial service providers across multiple continents. These operations demonstrate increasing technical sophistication, moving beyond basic denial-of-service tactics to advanced techniques including social engineering, custom malware deployment, and targeted attacks against financial sector employees. Security research has identified at least 4 distinct Iranian groups actively targeting financial institutions: APT-33 Elfin, APT-34 Oil Rig, APT-35 Charming Kitten, and Phosphorus. Each group demonstrates different technical capabilities and targeting patterns, suggesting a division of labor within Iran's cyber operations. Iran has increasingly employed proxy hacking groups to maintain plausible deniability. Groups like Cutting Sword of Justice claimed responsibility for the Saudi Aramco attacks, while the ad-Din al-Qassam cyber fighters took credit for the U.S. bank attacks. These proxies create particular challenges for defenders as attribution becomes more difficult, complicating diplomatic or military responses. Evidence shows knowledge transfer between Iranian hackers and their Russian counterparts. Security researchers have documented technical similarities between malware used by Iranian groups and code previously deployed by Russian operators. This relationship benefits both nations. Iran gains technical capabilities, while Russia extends its influence against common adversaries. Iran has evolved from causing mere disruption to developing potentially destructive financial system attacks. Current capabilities demonstrate potential to compromise internal banking systems, manipulate transaction data, and interfere with settlement processes. In 2021, Iranian hackers targeted a Middle Eastern financial institution's authentication systems, attempting to manipulate verification tokens for customer identities and transactions. Had this attack succeeded, it could have enabled fraudulent transactions appearing legitimate to the banking system. Iran's cyber capabilities now present a genuine threat to financial institutions worldwide despite limited resources compared to major powers. Through strategic investment, knowledge transfer, and proxy operations, Iran has built capabilities that security experts consider among the most aggressive in targeting financial infrastructure. This emerging threat takes on new dimensions alongside Russian and Chinese capabilities. Each nation has developed distinct approaches to targeting financial systems. Russia with disruptive attacks, China with persistent intelligence gathering, and Iran with evolving destructive capabilities. What happens when three nations with complementary cyber capabilities begin coordinating their attacks against financial targets? This question leads us to examine potential synchronized attack scenarios that could exploit multiple vulnerabilities simultaneously. Synchronized attack scenarios. What happens when three nations coordinate their cyber attacks against financial targets? The result could potentially overwhelm global financial systems in ways that individual attacks cannot. While each nation already possesses significant capabilities independently, their combination creates scenarios where defensive systems face multiple simultaneous challenges across different vectors, a situation few institutions are prepared to handle. Synchronized cyber operations fundamentally differ from isolated attacks. When financial institutions face a single attack vector, such as a distributed denial-of-service attack targeting their customer-facing websites, they typically activate well-rehearsed incident response plans. Teams mobilize to filter malicious traffic, reroute services through backup systems, and communicate with customers through alternative channels. These responses proved effective against isolated incidents during the 2012 to 2013 Iranian attacks against U.S. banks. Defense systems designed for individual incidents become overwhelmed when confronting multiple attack vectors simultaneously. Financial institutions generally construct security measures assuming they'll face one major incident at a time. Their incident response teams, backup systems, and communication protocols are all calibrated for focused crisis management. Synchronized attacks function like multiple arrows striking a single target from different directions, finding gaps in armor designed to protect against frontal assault. Picture this scenario. At 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Russia launches destructive malware against the SWIFT messaging system that banks use to communicate transaction instructions. By 9:45 a.m., Chinese operators have compromised trading platforms with manipulated data, triggering algorithmic selling. At 10 a.m., Iranian hackers disable authentication systems of major payment processors. Each attack individually would require full mobilization of security resources. Together, they force impossible prioritization decisions while operating with limited visibility into the crisis scope. The financial system operates as an interconnected network rather than isolated components. when multiple components face simultaneous compromise. The interactions between them create cascading failures, exceeding the sum of individual attacks. A compromised payment system generates fraudulent transactions appearing legitimate to banking networks. Those networks, already facing attacks on messaging systems, cannot verify transaction legitimacy. Trading platforms respond to apparent liquidity problems by triggering sell algorithms. Each component reacts rationally to received information, but collectively generates system-wide instability. Market manipulation becomes particularly dangerous when combined with coordinated information warfare. Financial markets run on information and confidence. A synchronized campaign could exploit market psychology by combining system manipulation with deliberate misinformation. Russian operators compromise financial news services to plant false stories about bank insolvency, while Chinese hackers manipulate market data feeds showing dramatic price movements. Meanwhile, Iranian teams prevent clarifying messages from reaching customers. The resulting fog of uncertainty makes rational market function impossible, potentially triggering panic selling or liquidity freezes. Physical resource disruption amplifies cyber operations impact. Russia's control over European energy, Iran's proximity to critical shipping lanes, and China's manufacturing dominance create leverage points that synchronize with cyber attacks. During winter, Russia restricts natural gas to Europe while launching financial infrastructure attacks. European institutions face both system compromise and energy shortages affecting data centers and business continuity. Recovery efforts require generator power with limited fuel precisely when systems need maximum availability. The psychological impact on market confidence presents perhaps the greatest danger. Financial systems operate on trust that deposits are safe, transactions complete as instructed, prices reflect reality, and counterparties honor commitments. Attacks targeting multiple components simultaneously undermine this trust across multiple dimensions. During the 2008 financial crisis, interbank lending markets froze within days as institutions lost confidence in counterparty solvency. A synchronized attack compromising infrastructure itself could trigger worse confidence crises with even greater speed. Each nation brings complementary capabilities to this alliance of convenience. Russia excels in destructive attacks against critical infrastructure, particularly power grids and industrial systems. China brings sophisticated intelligence, gathering capabilities, and potential hardware access through global supply chains. Iran continues developing capabilities targeting authentication systems and financial messaging networks. Together, they create a comprehensive threat covering all major financial infrastructure components. This comprehensive coverage renders traditional redundancy measures ineffective. Geographic distribution of data centers provides little protection when multiple locations face simultaneous attacks. Redundant communication channels offer limited value when all channels experience coordinated disruption. Backup procedures assuming functional authentication systems cannot operate when those systems themselves face compromise. The financial system's complexity further advantages attackers. Modern finance involves thousands of institutions across hundreds of jurisdictions using dozens of technology platforms. This heterogeneity creates resilience against single-point failures, but makes coordinated defense exceptionally difficult. Different institutions maintain different security standards, incident response procedures, and regulatory requirements. Coordinating responses across this ecosystem during crisis presents tremendous challenges, even without synchronized attacks. Evidence increasingly suggests that Russia, China, and Iran are developing capabilities and relationships necessary for such coordination. Joint military exercises have included cyber components. Diplomatic agreements specifically mention information security cooperation. Technical analysis shows knowledge transfer between hacking groups associated with these nations. The foundation for coordinated operations exists and continues developing. The question remains whether these nations have actually tested or deployed synchronized attacks against financial targets. To answer this, we must examine the available evidence of coordination between Russia, China, and Iran in the cyber domain. Evidence of coordination. Are these three nations already rehearsing coordinated financial attacks? While no definitive evidence exists of fully integrated operations specifically targeting global financial systems, numerous documented instances of cyber cooperation between Russia, China, and Iran have emerged in recent years. These relationships have progressed beyond theoretical discussions to include joint exercises, technology transfers, and diplomatic agreements that could serve as foundation for future coordinated actions. The clearest evidence of cyber cooperation appears in formalized military exercises. Since 2015, Russia and China have conducted regular joint military drills that incorporate cyber warfare components. The Joint Sea Naval Exercises include simulated responses to cyber attacks against command systems. The 2019 Cybersecurity exercise focused on defending critical infrastructure while practicing offensive operations against simulated adversary networks. These exercises align doctrine, test communication protocols, and evaluate compatibility between different cyber units. Iran has participated in joint exercises with both Russia and China, though with less public acknowledgement of cyber components. The trilateral naval exercises in the Gulf of Oman in 2019 focused on maritime security, but included communications security elements relevant to cyber operations. These demonstrations show growing operational coordination among the three nations. Military cooperation extends to direct technology and knowledge transfer between these nations' cyber units. Technical analysis of Iranian malware has revealed code similarities with tools previously deployed by Russian operators. In 2018, security researchers identified parallels between destructive malware used by Iran's APT-33 group and previous tools linked to Russian threat actors, suggesting direct knowledge transfer. Between Russian and Chinese cyber units, security researchers have documented convergence in techniques, particularly regarding supply chain compromises and firmware-level attacks. This convergence indicates mutual learning and potential direct collaboration. Defensively, Russia has provided Iran with advanced monitoring equipment for controlling domestic internet traffic, while China has shared surveillance technology with both Russia and Iran. These defensive technologies support offensive operations by securing home infrastructure against potential retaliation. Formal diplomatic agreements provide another layer of evidence for cyber cooperation. Russia and China signed a comprehensive cybersecurity agreement in 2015 that prohibits cyber attacks against each other while establishing information sharing mechanisms. In 2019, Russia and Iran signed a similar information security cooperation agreement. These agreements create frameworks that limit attacks between partner nations while potentially enabling coordinated operations against mutual adversaries. Most significantly, Russia is helping Iran build a domestic internet architecture similar to China's Great Firewall, creating technical compatibility between Iranian, Russian, and Chinese networks that could facilitate coordination of cyber operations. This shared infrastructure development demonstrates commitment to long-term strategic alignment. In international forums, the three nations have aligned their positions regarding internet governance. At the United Nations and International Telecommunication Union, they consistently advocate for cyber sovereignty positions that would give nations greater control over domestic internet infrastructure. This diplomatic alignment reflects shared strategic interests in reshaping the cyber domain. Strong evidence comes from overlapping targets and techniques in recent campaigns. Security researchers have documented instances where different threat actors targeted the same institutions within short time frames. Between 2019 and 2020, financial institutions in the Middle East faced successive intrusion attempts attributed to both Russian and Iranian groups. The Iranian operators appeared to target systems previously mapped by Russian intrusions, suggesting intelligence sharing. Similar patterns emerged against financial technology companies in Southeast Asia, where Chinese and Russian groups focused on different aspects of the same organization's infrastructure. Command and control servers used by different nation-state groups have been hosted in each other's territories or shared similar network infrastructure. This pattern suggests tacit cooperation in providing operational support. Intelligence assessments note that cybersecurity has become a regular agenda item at BRIC summits, with working groups established to address information security cooperation. These official channels provide cover for deeper technical collaboration. Financial institutions have noted emerging complementary operations. Russian groups target banking infrastructure. Chinese operators focus on intellectual property. And Iranian groups target energy companies and financial infrastructure of mutual adversaries. This division of labor suggests strategic alignment that could evolve into more direct coordination. Full integration remains limited by language barriers, cultural differences, and operational security concerns. Current evidence suggests strategic alignment with tactical awareness rather than fully integrated operations. The three nations maintain separate command structures while sharing intelligence, techniques, and strategic objectives. What emerges is not a fully integrated cyber alliance, but the foundation for potential coordinated attacks if geopolitical conditions warrant. The technical capabilities, communication channels, and strategic alignment necessary for synchronized operations exist and continue to develop. The missing element appears to be the political decision to execute such operations rather than technical limitations. This foundation becomes particularly concerning when considering emerging technologies like cryptocurrencies that could amplify the impact of coordinated attacks. As digital assets become increasingly integrated with traditional financial systems, they create new vectors for market manipulation and system disruption that could be exploited by coordinated action among state actors. Cryptocurrency manipulation. How could state actors use cryptocurrencies to magnify the impact of financial system attacks? As digital assets become increasingly intertwined with traditional banking and investment systems, they create a new attack surface that Russia, China, and Iran could potentially exploit. The integration creates vulnerabilities at the intersection of regulated finance and largely unregulated crypto markets. Remember what happened in May 2021? A single tweet from Elon Musk announcing Tesla would no longer accept Bitcoin triggered a 50% price decline across cryptocurrency markets, erasing over $1 trillion in market value. This demonstrates how relatively minor events can cascade into massive sell-offs. Now imagine what state actors with substantial resources could accomplish through targeted operations. Cryptocurrencies have become deeply connected with traditional financial systems. Major banks offer crypto custody services. Investment firms have launched Bitcoin ETFs and futures contracts. Payment processors facilitate crypto transactions for merchants. Even central banks explore digital currencies based on similar technologies. This integration means disruption in crypto markets potentially affects traditional financial systems in ways impossible just a few years ago. This growing interconnection creates new vectors for market manipulation and system disruption. The crypto ecosystem operates with fewer regulatory safeguards than traditional finance. Market surveillance remains limited. Circuit breakers that halt trading during extreme volatility don't exist in most crypto exchanges. Anti-manipulation rules are inconsistently applied. These structural weaknesses create opportunities for state actors to cause disruption that could spill over into conventional markets. Evidence suggests state-sponsored cryptocurrency mining operations in several countries of concern. Iran presents perhaps the most direct evidence of state involvement. Facing severe sanctions on oil exports, Iran approved industrial-scale Bitcoin mining as an official industry in 2019. Analysis of Bitcoin's network traffic suggested Iranian mining operations consumed up to 600 megawatts of electricity, equivalent to a medium-sized power plant. Iranian officials have explicitly described cryptocurrency as a mechanism to evade sanctions. These mining operations provide nations with significant Bitcoin holdings outside the conventional financial system and create technical expertise in cryptocurrency infrastructure that could support sophisticated operations targeting market integrity or system stability. Bitcoin's market capitalization now exceeds $1 trillion during peak periods, with total cryptocurrency markets approaching $3 trillion. Price movements increasingly correlate with traditional assets during periods of market stress. This correlation creates potential for manipulated cryptocurrency crashes to trigger selling across other asset classes. A coordinated attack might unfold like this. State-sponsored actors could use their substantial holdings to execute a massive sell-off across multiple cryptocurrencies simultaneously. The resulting price collapse would trigger liquidations of leveraged positions, forcing additional selling. As institutional investors face losses in their crypto holdings, they might sell other assets to cover positions or reduce risk exposure. This contagion could spread to equity markets already sensitive to correlation with Bitcoin prices. The crypto market's digital roller coaster, capable of 20% swings in a single day, becomes particularly dangerous during periods of market uncertainty. During the March 2020 COVID-19 market crash, cryptocurrency prices initially moved in close correlation with equities, suggesting shared investor bases and risk considerations. A manipulated crypto crash during an already fragile market environment could potentially accelerate broader selling across multiple asset classes. Beyond market manipulation, cryptocurrencies provide potential attack funding while evading sanctions. The anonymity features of certain cryptocurrencies facilitate sanctions evasion. While Bitcoin transactions remain traceable on its public blockchain, privacy-focused alternatives like Monero use advanced cryptographic techniques to obscure transaction details. These technologies potentially allow nation-states to move funds without detection by conventional anti-money laundering systems. Russia has reportedly developed a digital ruble that could function independently of the SWIFT messaging system. China's digital yuan similarly operates outside Western-controlled financial infrastructure. These state-backed digital currencies leverage similar technologies to create payment channels outside conventional banking systems. The vulnerability of crypto exchanges to state-sponsored attacks presents another significant concern. Unlike traditional financial infrastructure with decades of security development, many cryptocurrency exchanges operate with limited security, resources, and experience. In 2017, North Korean hackers allegedly stole approximately $81 million in cryptocurrency from South Korean exchanges using techniques that mirror methods employed by other state actors. By compromising exchange infrastructure to prevent withdrawals or manipulate displayed prices, attackers could create the appearance of insolvency or fraud. Given the history of exchange collapses in cryptocurrency markets, such manipulations could trigger mass withdrawal attempts across multiple platforms simultaneously, creating liquidity crises even at uncompromised exchanges. Cryptocurrencies represent both a target and a tool in financial cyber warfare. As targets, they offer less defended infrastructure connected to traditional finance. As tools, they provide alternative transaction channels, anonymous funding mechanisms, and market manipulation opportunities. Despite these concerning possibilities, significant barriers still limit the likelihood of full-scale financial cyber attacks leveraging cryptocurrencies. The same volatility that makes these markets vulnerable to manipulation also limits their utility for state actors seeking predictable outcomes. Cryptocurrencies increasing, but still limited integration with traditional finance reduces contagion effects. Most significantly, major nations have begun implementing regulatory frameworks that increase transparency and security in cryptocurrency markets. As we examine the broader barriers and limitations that constrain potential attacks on global financial systems, cryptocurrencies represent one element of a complex risk landscape. The technical capabilities for serious disruption exist across multiple vectors, but strategic consideration, barriers, and limitations. What prevents these nations from launching an all-out cyber war on Western financial systems today? Despite possessing sophisticated capabilities and clear motivations, Russia, China, and Iran have so far refrained from triggering catastrophic disruptions to global finance. This restraint stems not from technical limitations, but from strategic calculations that balance potential gains against significant risks. The most powerful constraint mirrors the nuclear deterrence concept of mutually assured destruction. Major powers recognize that financial systems represent critical infrastructure with potential for devastating counterattacks. If Russia deployed destructive malware against Western payment systems, it would face immediate retaliation against its own financial infrastructure. While Russia has invested in creating somewhat isolated domestic payment systems, its banks and businesses remain vulnerable. Russian elites maintain significant assets within Western financial systems, creating personal exposure that reinforces institutional caution. China faces enormous potential losses from financial system disruption given its position as the world's largest exporter. The Chinese economy depends on stable global payment systems to receive approximately $2.6 trillion in annual export revenues. Any attack causing systemic disruption to international banking would effectively sever China's economic lifeline. With foreign exchange reserves exceeding $3 trillion largely held in Western financial instruments, China has placed a multi-trillion-dollar deposit that could be frozen or devalued in response to hostile actions. This economic interdependence creates strong self-deterrence for China. China's legitimacy with its population rests heavily on delivering continued economic growth and prosperity. The potential domestic political consequences of triggering global financial instability outweigh any strategic advantages China might gain. Iran maintains limited connections to global finance through entities in countries like China, Turkey, and Malaysia. These channels provide essential access to international markets for oil exports and imports of critical goods. A major Iranian-linked attack on global financial systems would likely trigger even more comprehensive secondary sanctions, potentially eliminating these remaining financial lifelines. The relationship between these nations and global financial systems resembles a high-wire act where all participants must maintain balance. One wrong move could send everyone tumbling down, with no safety net below. Beyond strategic deterrence, coordination challenges complicate sophisticated attacks across different cyber units. The three nations operate with different cyber doctrines, technical approaches, and organizational structures. China focuses on long-term intelligence gathering, while Russia prefers more disruptive approaches. Iran's revolutionary ideology sometimes prioritizes symbolic targets over strategic impact. Each nation maintains legitimate counterintelligence concerns about sharing advanced capabilities with potential future competitors. Russian technical specialists avoid revealing zero-day exploits to Chinese counterparts who might later use them against Russian systems. Similarly, Chinese operators have little incentive to share sophisticated techniques with Iranian teams that might lack the discipline to deploy them without detection. Coordination requires secure, reliable communication channels between different operational teams. Using conventional communications risks exposure through Western intelligence agencies' monitoring capabilities. Even encrypted channels carry risks of compromise. These operational security requirements create friction that reduces the likelihood of seamless integration. Financial institutions have significantly improved their defenses in recent years. The 2016 SWIFT attacks targeting banks in Bangladesh served as a wake-up call for the sector. In response, the financial industry established robust information sharing mechanisms like the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, FSISAC, which facilitates rapid distribution of threat intelligence across thousands of member institutions. Major banks now typically spend hundreds of millions annually on cybersecurity, with JP Morgan Chase maintaining a security budget exceeding $600 million per year. Central banks have enhanced system-wide defenses, with SWIFT implementing its customer security program requiring member banks to meet mandatory security controls. These measures have raised baseline security across the financial ecosystem, addressing vulnerabilities that might otherwise serve as entry points to larger systems. Western intelligence services maintain extensive visibility into adversary cyber units' planning and capabilities. U.S. Cyber Command's persistent engagement strategy involves maintaining presence within adversary networks to gather intelligence and disrupt potential attacks before they launch. This capability was demonstrated in 2018 when Cyber Command temporarily disabled the Internet Research Agency during U.S. midterm elections. This intelligence visibility increases the risk that attack preparation would be detected before execution. The resulting uncertainty about operational security causes hesitation among nation-state actors considering major financial system attacks. Legal and diplomatic consequences provide additional barriers. The 2015 agreement between China and the United States to refrain from commercial cyber espionage demonstrated that diplomatic pressure can influence cyber behavior. The threat of sanctions against specific individuals involved in cyber operations creates personal risk for operators and their leadership. While the capability for serious attacks exists, these strategic factors make deliberate financial collapse unlikely under current geopolitical conditions. Nation-states generally prefer operations below thresholds that would trigger maximum retaliation. However, these constraints could weaken under certain conditions. Severe geopolitical crises, particularly those involving existential threats to regime survival, might alter risk calculations. A nation facing devastating military defeat or regime-threatening sanctions might view financial system attacks as acceptable despite the consequences. The emergence of more sophisticated defensive measures and future technologies will further shape this landscape. As artificial intelligence capabilities advance, both attackers and defenders gain new tools that could shift the current equilibrium. Understanding these defensive measures and anticipating future developments becomes essential for evaluating the evolving risk to global financial stability. Defense and future outlook. Is the West prepared for the next generation of financial cyber warfare? The answer involves a complex patchwork of defense mechanisms that have evolved considerably since the first major attacks against financial institutions a decade ago. Today's defensive landscape includes sophisticated technical controls, cross-institutional collaboration systems, and regulatory frameworks designed to protect critical financial infrastructure. Yet questions remain about whether these measures can keep pace with rapidly evolving threats. At 2:37 a.m., while most employees sleep, an alert flashes across monitors in a bank's security operations center. A system administrator in London watches as anomalous traffic patterns emerge, the digital fingerprints of a state-sponsored attack. She activates response protocols developed through years of preparation for precisely this moment. Western financial systems now operate with multiple layers of defense, forming a digital fortress around our economic infrastructure. Major banks implement integrated security approaches combining network segmentation, advanced endpoint detection, and 24/7 security operation centers. When J.P. Morgan Chase detected unusual server activity in 2014, their segmented network architecture prevented attackers from reaching core banking systems despite having compromised over 90 servers. Behind these technical controls are dedicated security professionals who often work through nights and weekends, sacrificing personal time to maintain vigilance against threats that never sleep. The financial sector has developed specialized threat intelligence capabilities focused on nation-state actors. Teams of analysts monitor underground forums, analyze malware samples, and track indicators of compromise specifically associated with hostile operations. This intelligence feeds directly into detection systems, allowing targeted countermeasures against specific threats. These defenses face significant challenges against evolving threats. The attack surface continues to expand with cloud services, open banking interfaces, and mobile platforms. Legacy systems create vulnerabilities that can't easily be patched. Supply chain risks remain problematic, as demonstrated by the 2020 SolarWinds compromise that affected multiple financial institutions despite their sophisticated defenses. Public-private partnerships form the backbone of financial system defense. The Financial Services Sector Coordinating Council in the United States brings together institutions, government agencies, and regulators to coordinate security efforts. Similar structures exist in other Western countries. These partnerships create channels for classified threat intelligence and establish frameworks for coordinated incident response. The Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, FSISAC, connects over 7,000 financial institutions across 70 countries. When threat actors target one institution, indicators of compromise spread across the entire network within minutes. During the 2012 to 2013 DDoS campaigns against U.S. banks, this sharing mechanism significantly reduced the effectiveness of later attacks. Emerging technologies present both challenges and opportunities for financial system defense. Artificial intelligence functions like a tireless security guard, identifying patterns invisible to human analysts. Major financial institutions deploy machine learning systems that analyze millions of events daily, flagging anomalies for investigation. One security analyst described watching these systems as having thousands of expert analysts working simultaneously, never needing coffee breaks. However, offensive applications of AI create new challenges. Adversaries use machine learning to develop sophisticated phishing attacks that evade traditional detection. AI-generated content creates convincing fake communications that might trick even security-conscious employees. As these technologies mature, they may enable attacks that adapt in real time to defensive measures. International efforts to establish norms for cyber operations targeting financial systems have shown limited progress. The UN, along with initiatives like the Paris Call for Trust and Security in Cyberspace, have attempted to create frameworks for acceptable behavior. Yet these efforts face significant challenges without binding enforcement mechanisms and with limited buy-in from countries like Russia, China, and Iran. Scenario planning and stress testing have become standard practice among major financial institutions. Programs like the Bank of England's CBEST and the European Central Bank's Tiberiu tests evaluate resilience against sophisticated attacks. These exercises have identified critical gaps in response capabilities, from communication breakdowns to unclear decision-making authority during cross-border incidents. Balancing security with maintaining efficient markets remains a fundamental challenge. Security measures create friction in financial processes. Multi-factor authentication adds steps to transactions. Network segmentation complicates system integration. This balance becomes particularly challenging in high-speed markets, where milliseconds matter. Regulatory approaches increasingly recognize these tensions. Rather than prescribing specific controls, frameworks like the EU's Digital Operational Resilience Act focus on outcome-based requirements. This allows security measures to adapt to specific operational requirements while ensuring baseline protection. The threat of financial cyber warfare is reshaping global power dynamics, even without major attacks being launched. Financial institutions incorporate geopolitical risk assessment into technology decisions. Nations view financial technology as a national security concern. The result is a gradual fragmentation of the global financial technology ecosystem, with Chinese payment systems, Russian messaging alternatives, and European digital sovereignty initiatives creating a more complex landscape. As financial warfare capabilities evolve, constant monitoring and adaptation remain essential. The interplay between offense and defense will shape not just cybersecurity practices, but the fundamental structure of the global financial system. Protection comes not from any single security measure, but from the system's ability to detect, respond, and recover from inevitable incidents in this shifting landscape. The financial system has become a digital battlefield where Russia, China, and Iran contest for power without firing a shot. These nations have built sophisticated capabilities to target banking networks, trading platforms, and payment systems through multiple vectors simultaneously. While economic interdependence makes a deliberate financial collapse unlikely, this evolving threat persistently outpaces our defenses. Protection requires technical controls alongside strategic deterrence, imposing real costs on attackers. Financial security and national security are now inseparable. This invisible war demands constant innovation and vigilance from all of us. Only through coordination between institutions, regulators, and intelligence agencies can we safeguard the systems